You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Okay, we'll call this meeting of the Branford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is Thursday, February 15th, 2024. I have 7:02 p.m. I'll introduce members of our commission and staff, and please acknowledge if you're here. Joe Chadwick, commission member. Joe, are you here?
Joe Chadwick is present.
Thank you, Joe. Fred Russo, commission
Fred
member.
Russo is present.
Thank you, Fred. Joe Vayuzo. You here, Fred? I mean Joe. Excuse me, Joe Vayuzo. I say it looks like
you gotta mute him.
Yeah, Joe looks muted.
There he is.
Joe Vayuso here.
Thank you, Joe. Marcy Pelusi. Marcy, are you here?
Marcy's here.
Thank you, Marcy. Massimo Liguri. Massimo, are you here?
Let me see if I've got him. Oh, need to make him co-host. Sorry.
I'm here, guys. I'm just going to be off camera for a little bit.
Thanks, Massimo. And our staff this evening is our town planner, Harry Smith. Harry, are you here?
I'm here.
Evan Brining, our assistant planner. Evan, you're here?
Here.
And our clerk recording secretary lurking in the cloud is Michelle Martin. I am Chuck Anders, chair. And we'll follow our normal format for public hearings. But before I get into that, I'm going to ask our secretary, Fred Russo, to read the notice of public hearing.
Okay, here we go. Legal notice, Town of Branford. The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby public hearings to be held on Tuesday, February 15th, 2024 at 7 p.m. by remote technology to consider the applications listed below. Information regarding participating in public hearings will be provided in the Commission's meeting agenda that will be posted on the town's website at least 24 hours prior to the application number 24-1.2, special exception for an accessory structure garage located at 34 Prospect Hill Road, 32 Prospect Hill, LLC, in care of John Application 23-1.3, special exception in coastal site plan for section 6.8, an oversized accessory structure located at 35 Buena Vista Road, 35 Buena Vista LLC, Matthew Steinfeld, applicant and owner. Application number 24-1.5, special exception for an oversized structure located at 236 Pleasant Point Road, Roger Holt, applicant and owner. At said hearings, persons will have the right to be heard. Copies are on file in the Planning and Zoning Commission's office at the Planning and Zoning Department, 1019 Main Street, Connecticut 405. Written communications may be sent to the above address or to Planning and Zoning at Branford-gov. Branford Planning and Zoning, C. Andres, chairperson.
Chuck Anders here. Thank you, Fred. We'll follow our normal format for public hearings. That means that the applicant goes first and the applicant make its presentation, including any of its consultants. After that, we turn it over to the commission and staff. Typically hear a staff report from a member of our staff. We open up for questions, comments from commission members. After that's done, at that point, we open up to the public portion. And I'm going to ask Evan in a moment to explain how the public can participate. I'd ask you state your name, any member of the public state their name and address, make for the record, make your comments. When the public portion is done, we allow the applicant to respond to any of the public portion, and we open it up for further questions or comments from commission members. We may or may not close the public hearing depending on how things go. So with that, Evan, can you just run over with us the process for participating in the public hearing?
Sure. If you'd like to participate in the public hearing, down at the bottom of your screen is a raise hand button. You can also type into the chat that you'd like to participate if you don't have a microphone. And if you're dialing in by phone, you can press *9. And again, we ask that you state your name at the beginning of your comment or question.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Evan. So with that, we'll move to our agenda. Our first public hearing item is a continued public hearing. It's Branford Real Estate LLC, care of Harry and Pravella, applicant and owner. This is 545, 558 West Main Street is the address. This is a special exception for used car sales dealership. Is the applicant ready to proceed with this one?
We are.
You may proceed.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Ben Connor, attorney here in Branford, representing the applicant Branford Real Estate LLC and its sole member, Ari Pravala. Ari is here as well. Also here is Nick McClay from Nafis and Young, who has prepared the plans for the submission that went along with the application. The applicant purchased the property back in August of 2020. It's always been the applicant's intention to run a used car sales dealership from these abutting properties. As some of you probably know and probably remember, the property located at 544 West Main Street was for years run as a used car sales dealership. In the years since, that area 544 and 558 has certainly run down. It's become a bit of an eyesore. It's our belief that our plans and application will not only make that area aesthetically pleasing and attractive and be compliant with the
recording in progress,
but it will also bring a suitable business into the town. Ari has a history of doing this. He did this in West Hartford, where he turned around a property which had been run down, turned it around, made it, again, aesthetically pleasing, brought in a suitable business, runs it successfully, as I'm sure Ari can touch upon. I know that there has been already a few revisions back and forth with the plans. It is really our determination to work with the town to be compliant with the guidelines, but also, to make it feasible and suitable for the business that Ari wants to have there. So if there are any specific questions, I know that there's a staff report that went out, engineers' comments. I'm sure the commission might have some specific questions regarding that. Ari is able to answer those. And also Nick, who is here as well. Any of those questions or comments can be addressed to Nick as well.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Connor. Do you have, is that it for now, or do you want to do anything else at this point?
I would turn this over to Nick if Nick wants to comment on anything specifically.
I can, if the town wants, I can go over the site plan in brief just to review it. Or if you want to skip to the last set of comments, I can go over those as well. If there's any preference.
Why don't you do a brief overview, and then if you'd like to address the last set of comments, you can do that as well.
I will do so. Give me 1 second. Screen share. So, this is the existing conditions as the lot is. As you can see, we've got the car dealer building here. The existing building that's falling apart is over here. These are the actual contours as we did an actual topo of the ground. So those are the real numbers, not just pulled off GIS or anything of that nature. And you can kind of see in here, there's a retaining wall here that wasn't on the original plans, and I'm showing the top and bottom of each of them. And go on to the site plan. And as you can see, there's not overly much to it. As he said, we're going to turn the existing building here into another used car dealer. You know, there's an existing 2-bay garage right here. We're going to use around 250 square feet of the existing remaining building for an office. The rest of it will just be, you know, your standard storage and things of that nature. Based on those two numbers from the town, we needed 11 parking spaces. As you can see, we've got 5 parking spaces shown over here, and then 6 parking spaces shown over here. I know one of the comments the town had was to put a 5-foot barrier across this section, which we shown here, which is partially why these spaces are shown the way they are. We previously had them lined up with the building, but with that 5-foot space, we couldn't keep the same number of spaces. Over here, this area here will be the car storage lot. There's no special, there were no parking requirements in that, so we're not showing any striping or any of that nature. Each of the parking spaces, for the record, also follows all town regulations. We've got at least 24 feet of space between the space and any type of building or other material. Each space is 18 by 10, which is one of the minimums. Along the back line, there's there's several existing large trees, which we show on here. We're going to retain all of these trees in this area. There's one existing tree over here that is going to be cut down. We had to fit it in. You know, we have the sidewalk over here. We previously had shown it at 10 feet off over in this area, but with the town recommendation, we moved it out from underneath the guy wire. And I know one of the current comments is that we should work with the town to figure out this specific area to make sure that any further expansion sidewalks will be able to tie in, and we are obviously more than happy to do that. You know, moving on to, next page coming. And a little more. There we go. Moving on to the grading plan. We're not really proposing anything going on over here. The existing grades are what we're showing. Over here, we're going to do some fill, and then we're going to put a 2-foot wall across this section here. That shrinks down to a little less than 2 foot over here, and then grade it so that all of the any water will just always flow this way and then into the big detention, or not detention area, sorry. The big wetland, not wetlands, wetlands is the wrong word. The big area over here where it's already, I apologize, I'm blanking on the word, but this is where all the water already flows to now. You know, I know one of the comments was asking about stockpile. Stockpile is going to go here. One of the comments was mentioning how we did not have on the previous ones, the top and wall shots, which we put in top and wall. Excuse me, sorry. They also asked about limits of clearing. You know, over here, all of this existing area is already paved. So there's not really any clearing going on here. We're just going to kind of remove the side or the pavement and replace it with grass. I'll show that better on the landscaping plan. And over here, there's no real clearing going on here, just a little bit of regrading to tie into that one. And everywhere else, as you can see, we've got it listed, you know, 4 feet off the center of these existing trees is where we're going to be placing any kind of silt fencing and that material. And I'll move on. You know, landscaping plan, as I stated, we're just sorry. In terms of landscaping, we are proposing a simple fence along both back corners. On this side, we're just going to propose a fence along this line as well. And on this side, we've got some red chokeberries, or whatever happens to be available at the time they actually are planting. Obviously, plantings are not necessarily guaranteed year to year. I know on this plan, I'm specifying that we did stop the sidewalk at this specific location. One of the previous comments that was asking us to extend it as much as we can, and we felt this was as far as we could realistically do so, as right here is that start of that large drop off. And that is a 20 to 25 foot drop off. So we erred on the side of caution and chose not to make anybody possibly stumble into it. You know, everywhere else, all of this is just gonna be grass, 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 this area over here. I did not show it on this plan, but this will all just be grass as well, grass over here. As I stated, the fence will turn into the corners of the building over here. We did choose a fence over landscaping plants specifically. The town regulations do say that you have the ability to approve us to do that if you want to. We chose a fence specifically because well, as you can see, there's a large amount of existing trees on this side, and we didn't want to try and plant anything underneath the existing foliage. And on this side, we're already continuing the fence, so we went with that. And I had one, and this is just the lighting plan. You know, I know one of the comments was asking about the size of the light poles and the location of them. You know, we have a light pole here, I believe. They were 16 feet in height, which I believe should be called out on here somewhere. If I know it was we mentioned it. Oh, here we go. Yeah, right here, mounted on the poles right there. And then this is just a thing showing where we're removing all of the existing impervious surface. You know, all of this green area here is pavement at the moment, and we're going to be replacing it with grass. This area over here is gravel parking, and we're going to be replacing it with grass. This lighter gray is just existing impervious surface that we're going to leave as impervious surface. You know, building, parking lot, this building will become the parking lot. And the slightly darker gray is where we're going to be adding some surface. A little bit over here as well for the sidewalk. And I have the numbers down here for, you know, across the entire project site, we're actually removing around 2,000 square feet of impervious surface. However, one of the previous comments from the town engineer was that that does not get counted towards the stormwater calculations, so over here we have approximately 1,400 feet added, which is why if we could go back up here, added some stormwater infiltrators over here, and we're going to just plan on tying them into the roof leader and gutter line of that building to just handle the increase in flow across the actual private property area. And that is all I have at the moment. If the town, sorry.
Chuck Anderson, thank you. Does the applicant have anything else at this time?
I would just like to add a couple more points regarding two specific areas. One regarding the landscaping that there's a lot of comments on in the staff report, as well as the front buffer, which kind of ties into the landscaping. As far as the landscaping, we're improving the site considerably already, as Nick touched upon. We're removing large chunks of those impervious surfaces. We're taking down that house in the back, and we're adding that fence in the back to provide the screening. And I'm not sure if Nick mentioned as well, but there's a pretty significant drop off also in the back. So with the landscaping, trees and the vegetation, the fencing and the drop off, all of which is already there, we believe that provides the screening, which should be suitable for the commission, for the regulations to allow that over some of the landscaping requirements. Regarding the front buffer, if we add any more of the landscaping buffer there, already we are, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 35 feet back from the pavement from where the road is.
35 feet from here to existing edge of pavement is a little over 35 feet.
Right, so we're already back that distance. If we go another 12 and a half feet, we're almost at 50, and we're eating into a lot of these parking spaces that are there, which would be very difficult for the business. In addition, we're adding that sidewalk there. We're going to have lawn and grass there. since this type of business, this type of application is hopefully showcasing vehicles and cars there, having things like bushes or tall flowers or trees, items that would be blocking those cars from there, isn't really suitable for the applicant's business. So I just wanted to bring those couple areas to light. Ari, if there's anything that you would like to touch upon as well.
Well, thank you for the presentation so far. This will be a very similar, if not identical, business to the one I'm running here in West Hartford. Again, I've been here since 2017. Family-run business. I run it with my kids. Looking to do the same Branford, so I'll be owner-operator. My records are here with Town of West Hartford. They were pleased with me to take a very similar old building. It's made it nearly new. I have no citation, no fines from town, no complaints at all. 4.6 star rating as far as my business. No complaints with Better Business Bureau. So I'm trying to do the same thing with my new business in Branford.
Thank you, sir. Anything else from the applicant at this time?
Nothing further.
Great, thank you. Checking under share. Okay, we'll turn it over. This time we'll have our Evan review the staff report. I believe you did this one, Evan. Do you want to review that with us?
That's correct. I think Nick and Ben had covered the majority of the issues that I covered in my staff report. So I'll just try to touch upon a few of them. This is the proposed site plan here. They meet the bulk requirements of the BL district. They're not actually proposing any new structures on the site. They discussed the landscaping plan, and Attorney Connor described how the front landscape buffer, and given the size of the right-of-way, would minimize some of the parking availability to them if they tried to satisfy that requirement. So the front yard landscaping requirements have not been met. There is some existing vegetation that they could use to satisfy the eastern side yard requirement. And they're proposing this fence along the rear and the side because they're not proposing any landscaping in that area either. I think the green belt buffer requirement, as this property abuts against a residential district here in the back. These are all single family homes. There is a requirement for at least one half of the required depth of the residential district setback shall be provided and maintained by the owner in the business district. The setback is 25 feet, so the applicable greenbelt buffer setback is 12.5 feet. They've moved the parking spaces out of this 12.5 foot buffer. However, they're not proposing any landscaping in this area. Nick had broken down that there are some existing trees that are proposed to remain. Staff would like the applicant to label these as to remain. There are also additional requirements in that greenbelt buffer for trees and shrubs shall be planted along the side and rear property lines to give a screen at least 10 feet deep using approved hardy indigenous plant materials, which at least 30% shall be evergreen, at least 60% shall be not less than 6 feet in height at planting, as well as another line in that section that states permanent structures such as fences, walls, and existing proposed grading may be approved in lieu of landscaping where, in the opinion of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the intent of these regulations will be served. The applicant, like I said, is proposing a screen fence along the majority of this back property line. Also, these retaining walls here and some regrading. So the commission may determine that they're satisfying the greenbelt buffer requirement with these with these measures that they're proposing. They satisfy the off-street parking requirement. However, I believe this is an existing fence along with this existing retaining walls, which I believe both are proposed to be removed. So staff would like the applicant to just take those off of the site plan if they are to be removed. And as well as we'd like the applicant to clarify if this handicap parking space on the western side, how the patrons would navigate in and out of that space there. They satisfied the lighting requirements. However, staff would just like the applicant to comment on what lighting is proposed to remain on after business hours, given that we have these residential properties in the rear and we're not able to satisfy that greenbelt buffer requirement to its full extent. They are proposing erosion control measures, and they've added a limit of clearance, basically where those erosion control measures are to be planted. They added a stockpile, and they meet the 3-to-1 slope requirements. Some comments were circulated with my staff report for or from the town engineer in response to the latest stormwater management report from the applicant. I believe there's still a few outstanding items that would need to be resolved before we could vote on this application. Concerning the proposed retaining walls, the applicant did add some top of wall and bottom of wall measurements. Sorry, give me just one moment. And see here, I think the wall at its highest point would be 2 feet tall. We have some parking spaces proposed to be right up against that wall. There is a line in our retaining wall section that states guardrails or railings are required at the top of retaining walls in locations where an unprotected wall would pose a safety hazard for pedestrians or vehicles. Staff would like the applicant to add a guardrail to the top of this retaining wall. I believe we also did receive some written correspondence from one of the neighbors in the rear that cars have fallen into their backyards in the past. So staff just thinks this would be a good idea. They provided the sidewalks that we had requested in our earlier staff reports. I believe the engineering department wanted them to reach where the existing guardrail is now. Looks like they're pretty close to that. The engineering department is working on extending sidewalks up West Main Street on this side. Like Nick had described for us, this area over here is wooded and there's a large drop off. But I believe there may be an opportunity in the future to install sort of a boardwalk closer to the roadway on the north side of that guardrail. But like I said, they're extending the sidewalk to where they had wanted it to go to. Staff recommends that the public hearing be continued to allow additional information to be submitted by the applicant in response to the town engineer's comments and to provide some of the information requested in my staff report.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Evan. Questions, comments from commission members before we open it up to the public? Okay, let's open it up to the public, see if any members of the public wish to comment. Evan, can you once again review with us the process for public participation?
Sure. Down at the bottom of your screen, there's a raise hand button. You can also type into the chat and let us know that you'd like to speak. I do not see any members of the public that would like to speak.
Okay. Okay, so as I understand it, there are a number of items. I saw the engineering memo of February 9th, lists 4 items regarding peak flows and volumes, and that isn't in conformance with the regulations, and some other things about the stormwater infiltrators and correcting typos and a few other things. Evan, you mentioned a number of things as well. The major one being, it looks like the guardrails on top of the retaining wall, and then there's the landscaping issue of what you can realistically, what our regulations require for this site. So anyway, that's sort of my takeaways, and you're suggesting the hearing be continued. So those are my understandings. Any other questions, comments from the commission members before we push it? See if the applicants have further comments.
I have some comments.
Sure, Marcy.
In particular, you've got some very large trees at that back property line. From what I can tell, have a label or 24. You know, the radius that you show for the canopy isn't indicative of those size trees. And to have a fence right along the property line is going to damage the roots and certainly compromise the integrity of the trees, which are the only real trees that are separating the residential zone. I don't personally feel that, you know, a 2-foot wall is not a significant drop. The cars are it's gonna be high enough to block the bumper of a car. So I don't know that a guide rail is so necessary if he is indeed grading at 3-to-1 down to those trees, but I am concerned about the elevation of the grade covering the root systems of the tree, the fact that the fence is at the trees, and it's the only real buffer that they're providing. You know, they've given a 12.5-foot garden setback, but they could have very easily put some, you know, evergreens there, you know, a living fence there as opposed to a mechanical fence. I'm not sure if they're worried about security or not. That didn't come up, but you know, again, they're budding neighbors. I'm also very unclear about the lower area where everything is draining to. I assume it's going to be wet. I don't know if the property at 14 Beaver Road is residential or commercial. So I don't know if that's a situation where you've got a commercial use abutting the residential zone, but you know, there's a tremendous opportunity in there to at least infill with some more native type plants or rain garden type plants, especially since they're taking half of the property's water into that system. You know, Aronia is a very native plant. It's not really something that I would put in a formal arrangement right there. I would use that with some other natives to improve the stability of that slope, which from what I can gather is you've got 5-foot existing contours, which is quite steep. So I'm worried about erosion in there. I'm worried about, you know, if it is, I don't know if it's wetlands or not. He wasn't required to do a soils test or go to wetlands is what I'm gathering. But if it is wet and there is slope, I mean, I think that's an important resource to kind of look at least know what is there, especially if they're trying to connect the sidewalk system at some point. And then lastly, as far as landscaping, yeah, it's a great green strip along the road, but if I'm understanding this correctly, it's right at the light. Is there a light right there? Am I at the correct property?
Yes.
So is there some place where somebody would want to create a crosswalk at some point at the light for pedestrians to cross the street? And would that need to happen on this property? I don't know, because I can't see the road across the street on the drawing to really understand. You know, from what I know from being in Branford, I know it's pretty much there. So I don't know where the crosswalks. All right, so they're further up where that sidewalk would be.
They're on the opposite side of the intersection.
Okay, that's further up. Okay, and so then you're hoping to get the sidewalk connected from this, and then that house is coming down, and you've got the low wires. That's helpful. Yeah, so you've got a lot of trees in there that I think are important to be really cognizant of with the grading in the back. And I certainly think that that's enough of a living screen, but I wouldn't want to see mechanical things going in there. And then I'm not sure what that vegetation, if you keep going to the right where that one tree is coming down, can you go to the right more? Down the street a little bit more? So yeah, so that vegetation, you know, I'd be curious, you know, a lot of that is sumac. There might be some good usable things, but I think it would be, you know, useful to at least clear a portion along the roadway and maybe address that edge or have, you know, introduce some street trees or something to, you know, make that a little more attractive for the highway.
Harry Smith, town planner. I think a lot of that, the right of way extends pretty far back from the edge of pavement there.
Mhm.
It's the same distance as it is further back up when you're at the site. So what is that, 30 feet at least back from the edge?
30, 35 feet, somewhere in that
35
area.
feet, just so you know. I mean, you have to go to DOT and get permission. I'm sure they'd probably be okay with having that cleared. to just
Well, I
improve
mean,
safety. But
yeah, but I mean,
just so
it's
you know.
still, you know, it's. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah,
property.
yeah. I
I
just
mean,
wanted to point that out. That's all.
yeah, I mean, I just think it needs to be maintained in a, you know, an appropriate plan. I mean, you've got a river system next door, and you know, it just seems like, you know, that should be cleaned up. I mean, it's part of the right of way. Maybe it's a, you know, if it's the DOT's responsibility, then it's a DOT. And is that a billboard in the middle of that lower
Yeah,
area?
you know, I was just seeing that too.
Okay,
I don't know what the date of the photo is. Is that still there?
it could be.
It's 2019.
I bet it is, to be honest.
Oh, either that or it's
I
overgrown.
do not recall seeing the billboard specifically. The base may still be there though.
There it is. Oh, it's in the picture.
Oh, look at that.
Nope.
It's well, no, that's a house.
It's just in the picture.
Nope.
No, previously, go further down.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was a
so-
previous year.
The
Yeah,
billboard was
that's-
removed. There might be
Okay.
the base still there, but the billboard itself was removed.
Oh, okay.
So
Yes.
that's going to be discontinued as a use. That billboard.
It would be a question for the RE.
I have no plans for the billboard right now. So we're just looking to open up for a business, but we have no plans for a billboard.
So, I mean, they are going to DOT for the removal of pavement to neck down those driveways.
Yep. They got a road encroach. They got to go to permit. Yep.
So, I mean, since they're already applying, I mean, wouldn't
No,
be-
makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. That's just my concerns. I don't think a 2-foot wall, you know, it's requires a safety guardrail necessarily, but I am concerned about those trees.
Well, Chuck Andershare, on the guardrail, I think, Evan, you mentioned that you recommended it because there had been a history of cars going into the yard. Is that correct? Or what was the rationale for that?
One of the members, or one of the pieces of correspondence received from the neighbors in the rear, they did bring that up. We of course have that line in the code that we can add it in. I'm just trying to find that correspondence. And I believe also the yards in the rear are a few feet lower than the property we're discussing today. So there's an even further drop on those yards. But Nick, maybe that's not the case. I'm not sure.
So the 2 feet is on the low side exposed, not on the driveway side, is what you're saying. Maybe I misunderstood that.
Well, I think it's the, our
I'm looking
our
at the
2 foot
grades.
our 2 foot retaining wall that we're proposing, then a grade going down to the rear property line. I think it goes down further onto the on the rear.
So the top of the wall is at curb height.
Top of wall, bottom of wall, curves down to road.
Right, so the parking lot's up high.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's not
is
going
it-
above. There's no barrier with the wall. I was thinking that it was like a screen wall, 2 feet above the pavement height.
No,
If
I
you-
mean,
Right, but yeah, so I take back what I was saying about the guardrail. So yeah, because if you could jump the wall with the car easily, then you would need something. I was just
I mean,
visualizing that the top of wall was say 133, not 131.
yeah. I do currently have it shown at top of wall as parking lot height. It wouldn't be very much for me to say top of wall 1 foot above parking lot height and just
And then
add
it would
one
be-
more row of line. That
Yeah,
would
so
be
it's a
a very
segmental wall.
quick. Yeah, it's standard modular block walls,
So if
nothing.
you did a 3-foot wall, you'd have an 18-inch, or you'd have a 1 foot curb height, which would
Yes,
ease some
that
of
would be
that.
true. Yes.
Okay.
And That would probably be much easier than trying to install a guardrail specifically.
Well,
but-
you're not gonna be able to do it on the wall on a single wall. You'd have
Yeah.
to do it behind the wall.
Uh,
But,
yeah.
I would almost rather a higher wall so that you could protect the root zones of the trees.
Mhm.
They're at grade, because it looks like you're filling over the root zones.
Possibly, I mean, probably with how big the trees are. We
Yeah,
are
I mean,
trying to stay
40
a
inch
few.
continuous tree is gonna have, you gotta figure
Yeah.
out at least a 30-foot radius on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's not the convention for surveyors to do that, but I mean, it's substantial.
Yeah.
So when you cover more than a foot over the root zone, you're depriving oxygen to those trees, and you're gonna get a uneven growth on the opposite side, which, looks like it's straddling the property line, and some are on the neighbor's property line. So, I mean, it's just a concern for the neighbors.
Mhm.
To try to,
I did find that correspondence with some photos from the neighbors in the rear if you guys would like to see.
Yes.
I believe this is the existing house that's proposed to be removed.
Mhm.
So Harry's town plan, it doesn't look like there's a lot of visual screen in the winter at all. It's all deciduous, so.
Which is part of why we wanted to put a fence up. That way,
Well, I
in the winter,
understand
a
that, but
fence.
you
Yep.
just
No,
caught in a lot of different angles here because it's such a tight site. You put a
Mhm.
fence up, you're gonna get into the root zone too.
well, you would want to put the fence up at the height of the wall. If you put the fence at the edge of the parking and then the retaining wall behind the fence, say, 3 feet, then you would be protecting, you would get a little more screenage, and then you would essentially be protecting the root zone. Because the
So it
problem is
looked like
the
there was a
fence is
wall
right.
there now behind that house. What is that?
Well, there's an
Retaining
existing
wall?
fence there's like an existing 4-foot chain link fence.
Okay, there's an existing fence. All right.
And
But
there is an
really-
existing retaining wall as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you did like a wood slat fence at the edge, 6 foot at the edge of where your parking is, and then put the wall behind it, it serves as both,
Yeah.
type of guardrail and a barrier at the same time. And, and then I don't think you need to necessarily get into anything evergreen. Whereas to the west side of the building, I think there's more than enough space to propose some evergreen trees just as a courtesy to the neighbors. And,
Chuck Innes?
and likewise, I think there's, I'm not sure what the underside of the utility line is, but I think you could propose some low height, ornamental type trees along that new buffer that you're creating, and then you would still have plenty of vantage underneath the canopy without, impeding the utility lines, and you get a little bit of interest for the sidewalk, as a streetscape for Route 1, which, really needs some attention. But again, that is in the DOT area, so I don't know, why you're
Yeah.
there.
And I think they let you if you go through that process, but it's at risk, of course. So they can take them down whenever they want to for any reason.
Well, the
Fine.
utility companies could take them.
Utility companies and DOT could take them down too. If they
Well,
needed
if
to or
you,
wanted to.
if you plant them closer to the property line between the sidewalk and the property line and give them enough of a snow shelf. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah, practically speaking, unless they're going to widen the road out, but it's already 4
Well,
months
right,
out.
I mean,
See that
and there's no
happening, but-
control over that, right? Well, I mean, I can't predict the future, but,
It's hard to do that.
put 3 or 4 ornamentals in there would make a
really
tremendous
help.
addition to the streetscape.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I think you could do it without obscuring the building, and some of the cars.
Yeah, I understand. Chuck Innes, chair. I mean, Marcy, kind of what Marcy, you're, have a landscape. And what's your degree? Are you a landscape architect, Mark?
I'm a licensed landscape architect in the state of
Okay.
Connecticut with a degree in environmental science and landscape
There,
architect.
there you go. And
And this is my general, pitch, engineers have done a lot of work with engineers. They're great professionals. They know a lot, but they are not trained in selecting plants, or some of those type things. They're calculating water runoff and so forth. And I think it's important that licensed landscape professionals be required to submit plans, which is,
And
not
that's that was the point I was going to make, Marcy, because a licensed landscape, I don't think, has submitted a plan for this one. This is an engineer.
I'm not sure they're required. I mean, I think the way our regs read is like either or.
It says, unless waived by the commission due to minimal impact on proposed activity, a landscape architect licensed in Connecticut and what, should, and when existing trees remain, shall prepare the plans. So that's what we say it unless we waive it now. And maybe it is appropriate sometimes to waive it, but when you have a buffer, that's the thing that's kind of coming out to me when it abuts a residential area, and it's right in their backyard and it's upscale. That I would like that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but maybe I'm not in the right zone, but isn't there a regulation about 3/4 of the building having foundation plantings?
They added that.
What's it?
They added that requirement in their latest
So
revision.
that's what those 1-foot planters are supposed to be?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Let me take the.
It's 25% of the circumference.
Yeah.
Right. So they put planters in, but it looks like it's drawn about 1 foot. You've got no room to plant anything of any substance. So are they going to put annuals in there? Is that the idea? And is that sufficient as a foundation? I mean, and again, this may be another deficiency in our regs because, I mean, you need at least 4 feet around that part, part of the building to get any kind of, even a single row of a shrub height, So I don't really accept that as as complying. I'd rather, if it's not suitable because of the function of their business or they have other, issues relating to it, I would rather waive it than try to force someone, I'd rather, you could put a 1-foot planter off of the windows. I don't think that would count, but you could ornament the building in the front that way. And I don't know that that's necessarily appropriate. It might not be part of his business plan to have, that kind of a residential look with planters off of windows. So, but if he's going to propose a raised planter, I think it needs to be at least 3 or 4 feet. And if there's not room, given the circulation with the parking, then I'd rather not see it there at all. I'm looking at an old plan because he's got the parking turned on this one. So what's the distance from the property line to the building, to that left side?
Sorry, which side?
The west side of the building.
47.5 feet.
Oh, yes.
And then can you put the plan up and what's the buffer? He said he had proposed a retaining wall. So you've got a 5-foot buffer there?
Here?
Yes, from the wall, it's 5 feet off 5 feet off the property line.
And the parking spaces are how deep?
The parking spaces are 18 by 10.
Okay, and then at that corner of the building, you've got 24 feet. You have a minimum. So yeah, so that's tight. You're gonna have in that buffer, probably the overhang. Are you putting a curb there?
Not sure. I'd have to double check with my boss on that one.
The only reason I say is there's nothing to stop the cars from going right to that fence line. And, a typical space is, 18 is tight. So they're, in my mind, they're going to be overhanging that grass, which I don't think is a problem, but I'd rather see it just overhang grass at a curb rather than, losing the grass completely. And yeah, I mean, and so then you've got 24.9, if you maintain 24 feet. I don't know what the width of the planter is. It looks like it's maybe a foot. But if what is that made of? If it's a segmental block that's 18 inches wide, there's no room to put planting in there. So I just assume take the portion of grass that's in that buffer and count that as part of the coverage. and then try to get something along the right side of the building. Looks like you've got some space to the left of parking space 3. I don't know if you could shift that parking space down at all. You know, to me, that would be the area where, you know, maybe you could fit a small strip of, you know, something small along the foundation and take, you know, 4 feet. But I think you need to give yourself at least 4 to 5 feet in there, you know, maybe to the line of the parking space and make that all green with something. And I would, you know, that little notch in the parking, that seems kind of de minimis. So, and I mean, it's foundation, it's not necessarily front foundation. So couldn't you calculate the area behind the building that's left natural as part of that calculation? Evan or Harry?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So they need to have a certain, what percentage, 25%, or was it 7? I forget what the percentage was around the building, but if he could do that,
25.
right. So if you can get the 25 feet by that space to the east,
yeah,
you've got that whole right side that you could count. You've got the left side, and the back is natural anyway. So I mean, I don't see an issue counting that as part of the calculation if
Yeah.
it's left in natural state.
Is that back going to be grass, or is that some kind of pavement?
Right now, it's not pavement, and we're pretty much proposing to leave it exactly as it is. There's a retaining wall that runs. You can't see my map, but there's a retaining wall that kind of runs along that back line, an existing one. Yes, that one right there.
Oh, the off-property one?
Yeah. So we're kind of trying to just not mess with the neighbor's retaining wall at all, if we don't have to.
What if they think it's your retaining wall?
The way
it's clear it's not.
Yeah, I was gonna say the way it curves in on either side, it doesn't look like it would be considered ours, but I suppose I haven't talked with
it's
them.
clearly indicated as off property based on the survey. It's just, you know, at some point maybe it was you know, it was for the use of the front property and got improperly located off site or something. Who knows?
Do you know about how high that retaining wall is?
I want to say around 4 feet, 5 feet. That's a different retaining wall. That's the
one on the
that's
east
the
side.
one. Yeah, so that's the one that follows the fence line. Let's see if they have a. I know.
No, I don't think they gave us any photos of it.
That might not be his.
And you can't really see it here. You can kind of see it there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no good shots of it.
Next question, while we're sort of floating around here, are the proposed pole lights, how close are the poles going to be to the north end of the property, the north property line? I don't know. Didn't we just kind of get the info on the pole location pretty?
On the north property.
Yeah, as you know, the north property is away from the road.
Oh,
I don't see any on the plan, Harry.
Yeah,
we don't even know where they are yet. They're on the lighting plan, aren't they?
There's
Yeah,
one here and here.
And some lights on the building. We don't have anything in the back.
You don't have anything. Okay, so those are 16-foot poles up near the right-of-way line.
Yes.
And then some lights proposed along the frontage of the building.
Yeah.
Okay. I see floods aren't going to make it in terms of complying with the requirement for cutoffs. Unless they just called floods. If you're talking about those wall-mounted lights there, those look pretty good. So if that's what you're using, that probably should work, but we'll collectively look at that. Also, let's see what you got there. No, that's fine. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Chuck Anders, Chair. Any other commission members have comments? We've heard a lot of comments. Marcy had some suggestions, and again, in my mind, it's kind of highlighting why one of Marcy's themes is that we should have, professional landscape architects prepare plans, which hasn't been done. And I understand that you're saying, well, we're putting a fence and we're constraining, and we really don't need to, but there is a buffer area, and I thought Marcy had a number of interesting suggestions because she is a landscape architect. So, in event, I think we're gonna. The engineer had some comments. I think the staff suggestions continue the public hearing. Does the applicant have any further comments at this time?
None. Excuse me. None from me.
Okay. Then do we need permission to continue the public hearing? I think we opened it in January, so we need another
time extension to
March 7th.
March 7th.
All right.
So
I grant permission to extend it to, it's March 7th, you said?
Yes.
Yes, I grant permission for that extension.
Okay. Okay, so the applicant is granted an extension of the time necessary to complete the public hearing to March 7th. So does anyone else have any further comments before we move on to the next item on our agenda?
Do you think we could maybe get an impression from the commission whether or not they would be willing to entertain waiving the landscape architect requirement before we officially end the?
Sure. In other words, should they get a landscape architect plan? Yeah, the regulations, just read it. I read it. Here's what it says. It's 6.3D3. It says landscape professionals required, unless waived by the commission due to minimal impact of a proposed activity, a landscape architect licensed in Connecticut, and when existing trees will remain, a licensed Connecticut arborist shall prepare the plans illustrating compliance with the requirements of this section. So that's what our regulation says. And for example, Marcy brought up the fact, well, if you put these fences in, they could hurt the root zones of these trees and so forth. I mean, and plus the whole design elements. Those are my understanding. Those are kind of themes that happened a lot for a lot of applications. So what do people think? Would we be willing to waive that because of minimal impact? That's what the regulation says. Or do we say, hey guys, why don't you get a landscape architect for the next meeting and fill these in? Fred, what do you think?
Waive it.
Waive it. Joe Chadwick, what do you think? Joe, we can't hear you. Joe is still muted, right?
Sorry. Well, I certainly endorse the idea of full employment for design professionals. I don't think this is substantive enough to really need a landscape architect, so I would go for waive.
Okay. Joe Iuzzo?
Yeah. Excuse me. I agree. I think we should go for a waiving it.
Marcy?
It doesn't have to be substantive. I mean, no landscape architect can put 4 hours of work into this and improve it immensely. So I wouldn't approve of that. I mean, if I had seen it on the original plan, I would have been okay, but I'm not seeing well, based on what I'm seeing, I think it needs another professional insight on it.
Okay. Thanks, Marcy. I would agree with you, just in the sense because we're also dealing with a buffer to a residential zone, and I think it's good to have that. I don't know whether a fence is better, and it is important, I think, to keep some that there. But anyway, that's 3-2 against. So,
Can I interject one thing if it's going to be waived? Marcy, wait. I mean, I'm going to be hard pressed to approve this when I know that those trees are at risk, and I, if they come back with a better plan, I don't think it needs to be substantial, but there are much better plant varieties that can be proposed for the uses that they're proposing it. And there should be some plants proposed that just aren't, there's one plant listed. So unless he's going to go get some advanced horticultural education, I do think he should consult with somebody, even if it's not presented. I mean, it doesn't have to be, like I said, it only needs to be a couple hours to get a few plant types that would work in the scenario. I'm not trying to cost the applicant a tremendous amount of money, but I think there's some very real concerns with protecting those trees and being considerate to the neighbors and, planting along the highway under utility lines.
Thanks, Marcy. Okay, well, anything else before we continue this matter? Evan, did you have anything else?
Harry, can we count this as waiver of that requirement?
Frankly, I think this seemed to be like a straw poll. So I think Marcy had a great suggestion of, the consultation to, look at some of the issues that have been brought up, and certainly I think would be in the applicant's best interest, staff to make that investment and get the plan a lot closer to something that addresses some of the comments been brought up tonight. So, I mean, I didn't see, I indicated to me there's a 3-2 vote if someone made a motion to waive it, but I didn't see a motion per se. So,
okay.
Unless you guys want to do that now, or I don't know.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I know I'm sorry. I know I'm not voting, but could I make a comment?
Sure, absolutely. Possible. It's a public hearing. You can comment. Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Since I've been on this commission, I've come to realize how important and I never really understood it much until I joined this commission and started realizing how important plantings are. I caught something that came out of Marcy's, a few things that she spoke of. One of them is that it prevents certain plantings prevent a lot of flooding to the neighbors, which I very much think that's really important to protect the neighbors, and the people in Branford. I got to tell you, I mean, if you take a survey, they really, they're really worried about having the right plantings, to keep the certain species alive and to keep everything going properly for, on what they do for us in the environment. I really believe that, we should, this should be something put eventually into, into our regs, that we do need a planting professional. And it eliminates, it's not even that much more expensive. She said it would take 4 hours. It eliminates probably a few hours from the engineer. And so you're swapping one for another, but you're getting professionalism there. And you're getting something that people are talking about that is really important. I mean, I love the fact that Marcy caught that it was going to kill or maybe damage some of the roots on those trees. I think these are really important factors. I think we really need to start, to just, to get that professionalism from these landscape architects into the regs and make it sort of mandatory in the future. Listen, I'm all for building and making that spot really good. And if it doesn't work out for this spot, I think we need to really, put that reg into place. I think Marcy has made such good points on, what it preserves and how much better it would be for the neighbors and how much better it would be for the environment. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Chuck and Chair, thanks, Massimo. Any other comments from commission members or staff?
Chuck, Fred Russo. I think that I think the applicant has probably heard the loud and clear the comments were made. And I think the fact that we took a straw poll gives the applicant at least a pass officially not to use a landscape architect, but it might be to their advantage to contact someone. And when they come back with your plan, it might look like it took into consideration all the things that Marcy said and others said about the landscaping. And I think that if it comes back and it's acceptable, then we've accomplished what we wanted to do. If it comes back and it's not acceptable, then I said we should waive it. If it does not come back next time, then I think we would have to make it mandatory So it's going to be on them. If they want to get this project moving, to get it right, at the next meeting. They could do it unofficially and bring someone in for a few hours and have them do it. And we're going to take a look at it one more time. And if it looks like it's good, then I think all of us are going to be happy about it. If it's not good, then it's probably we'll take another vote that we're going to, not a straw poll, but an aqua vote, that they're going to have to bring a landscape architect in. So I think it's almost kind of like a shot across the bow right now. We're saying that we're not really we're split about it, 3-2, but I think that I think the applicant is spending a lot of money from what I could see from the plan, and I'm not one to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I think there's a lot of money, a lot of renovation, and no matter what you do, that project is going to look better than it does now. It's a total eyesore, and I would not want to discourage the applicant. And I'm not trying to diminish anything that's been said at the meeting, but I think what we have to take a look is a total picture here, what's going on. And we're going to take an abandoned piece of property that's got lots of issues. And even that property line, it's not like it's well maintained on both sides. What I could see, it's not maintained very well on either side, quite honestly. So I would just hope that the applicant and his people take into consideration what was said tonight. And even if they do it unofficially, they bring a landscape architect in to take a look at it and enhance what they've already suggested. And then when we look at it and it seems like it's a suitable plan, then we've done it without invoking or waiving anything. They did the right thing. We do the right thing. If it really comes back or like nothing's been done, then we will take it up for a vote. And then that'll be just another delay in the process. So I believe that we should move the process along. But I don't think it's fair to have an applicant keep coming back, over and over and over again, because it costs an applicant money to do that. So I think we've given, fair warning about what we expect, and hopefully the applicant, which I believe he will do, he'll do the right thing that satisfies the commission, satisfies the neighbors, and he can get started on a project that's going to make the whole entire area look 1,000% better than what's there right now. So that's my opinion.
Chuck and share. Thanks, Fred. Any other comments, commission members or staff? And nothing else from the applicant. Okay, then we will. Oh, did the applicant Ari? Did you have something?
Ari Praval again. The owner of the property. Purchased the property back in 2020. Small business owner. I own one of the ugliest pieces of land on that strip. Going back and forth with you for 3 years, try to pretty it up so I can open a business and make a living. I'll try to satisfy every request the town has asked. I hired professionals, lawyers, surveyors, engineers to bring this property to satisfy a small business and the local culture. I'm tearing an ugly house down. There's a cost. I'm joining both lots. I'm giving back a curb cut. I paid taxes for 3 years, insurance, kept up the building, cut the grass, did everything I can. I'm asking you for some flexibility. I like this to be the perfect lot, the most perfect lot in the world. I might not be able to afford it anymore. So I'm asking for some flexibility to just let me do business. Yes, I'll instruct my team to look into the landscape, so we won't come back with the same one. I appreciate the concerns to keep those plants and trees alive. I like to do. I own them. I'm just asking for some flexibility and some understanding of the loss I've taken so far and the investment I'll make in the future to just be a self-employed small business owner. Thank you.
Chuck and share. Thank you, sir. The other, in addition to landscape, remember the town engineer had some comments. If you can get the response to those to him so he can get back to us before the next meeting, that would be great too. Okay, with that, then we'll continue this matter with the applicant's consent to our regular meeting on Thursday, March 7 again, it's our regular virtual Zoom meeting at 7 p.m. So thank you very much.
Thank you for
And
your
with
time, everyone.
You bet. And that brings us into item number 2, which is 32 Prospect Hill LLC, John Lightfoot, applicant and owner. That's a special exception for an accessory structure. My understanding for that one is they needed another application for this one. So what are we going to do? Open and continue it? Is that what we decided? Is that what you recommend? Staff recommends?
That's what
Yes.
staff recommends. We can publish the additional special exception in the next legal ad for the March 7th meeting.
Okay, so we should open it and continue it then, and that way they'll both be on the same meeting. So with that, if you're here for item number 2, which is 32 Prospect Hill LLC, this is a special exception for accessory structure at 34 Prospect Hill Road. We are going to continue that to our next meeting also, which is our regular meeting on Thursday, March 7th at 7 p.m. And they'll have their additional application. We'll hear them both at the same time. So that covers item number 2. That brings into item number 3, which is 35 Buena Vista LLC, care of Matthew Steinfield, applicant and owner, 35 Buena Vista Road. It's a special exception coastal site plan for a single family residence and a grading 6.8 application and oversized accessory structure. Is the applicant or its representative ready to proceed on that one?
Yes, good evening, Commission. Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering, here at 420 East Main Street in Branford. I'm gonna go right to the show and tell. So this is the property at 35 Buena Vista. It's basically at the end of Buena Vista Road. This right away goes to, there is one property, there's an octagon house some of you may be familiar with out here, surrounded by some land trust property. And there is a tidal marsh at the south end of the property, noted here by the tidal wetland flags. The existing house was a Quonset hut type of structure with numerous additions on it. And then there's some various sheds that are on the property. Some of the additions to the Quonset hut was a covered carport. In fact, I'm going to stop this for a minute, so just so you can see, this is what the house looked like that was there before. This is the carport, and then there was a covered walk to this. It was, like I said, you could kind of see the curved roof here. It was that type of structure with these deck walkways around. You can see some of the gravel from the driveway here. I'm going to go back to the plan. In the event, so this was that gravel driveway area here, the carport, and then there in the back of the house there's a deck and a walkway, elevated walkway out to like a gazebo type structure that is basically just an observation platform. It's not anything that you could access by a boat or anything like that. The plan is to remove that house, which actually has been done because you saw the condition it was in, and to construct a new house in basically the same location. You can see the dotted line of the old house underneath here. There's a 1-story portion of the house here and a small 2-story portion of the house here. We're doing this with a crawl space type of construction because there is quite a bit of rock that was underneath the old house. Driveway in basically the same location. We kind of have a turnaround and a couple parking spots. We have gone to wetlands ready because there is, I should go back, underneath this carport was a pipe and a yard drain that kind of drained this area. The driveway is kind of low currently. And there was a bit of a intermittent water course here It looks like it had been manipulated over the years by the previous owner, moving boulders around and things. But that did trigger a wetland application, which we did get approval for and received the permit already on that earlier this week. New septic system in the higher part of the yard. A small addition, so part of the special exception for the accessory structure was there's a small addition going, the shed's going to be renovated, a deck here, a small addition. This will be a 1 bedroom with a like, I think they're calling it a music room, but a sitting area, no cooking facilities or anything like that. So it's not, an apartment. It's basically just an available space for a guest room, really. But again, new septic system, septic tank, a pump chamber up to the upper elevations a lot. We are handling the stormwater from the new roof area. We're taking the entire roof area, an inch over the entire roof area, not just the difference between the two roofs, into 2 rain garden areas on opposite ends of the house. One will discharge into that water course that's already been established. Another one will discharge into a little riprap area to prevent any erosion. We've shown a construction entrance at the existing driveway location and a topsoil stockpile area that I will say that have gotten moved to this location based on the interaction with the wetland folks. I will show you, there is in the plans, the architectural plans are not final plans. These are, it's oriented the other way, but this is that 1-story section here, and this is the 2-story bedroom section. This is the second floor. These are the sketches of what the place is going to look like. They are indicating a little piece of a green roof over the entry, which hasn't been detailed out yet. I did not count that as a green roof in our stormwater calculations, but they are intending to do something there. These are the other elevations. This is showing that walkway that goes out to that existing gazebo over the marsh. This is the east elevation. Again, you can see that little indication of a green roof that they're trying to create over that entryway. They did go to the architect, and the owner did go to the Stony Creek Architecture Review Board. There were some comments that that I believe Evan has included in the staff report. Basically, when they get to final decision on materials, they want them to go back. Standard erosion control sheets. And that's that. Again, it's just a single family house. It does have a sort of a separated guest room, but we're not looking for an approval for an accessory apartment. It's just a guest house, basically.
Chuck share. Thank you, Mr. Preddy. Evan, did you do the staff report for this one?
I did, and like Mr. Preddy described for us, special exception for an oversized accessory structure for a small addition onto an existing shed or a detached structure, as well as a coastal site plan application. They meet the bulk requirements of the R5 district. However, the plans do show an expansion of an existing raised walkway connecting the 2 outbuildings. A condition has been added that would require this to be removed from the site plan prior to a zoning permit or a building permit being submitted, or obtaining a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. That way they don't have to come back here for a site plan modification if they do get that variance, if they choose to not remove it. They meet the off-street parking requirements. No lighting plan was submitted, but a condition has been added that would require compliance with the submitted or for any proposed lighting on the exterior of the structure. There's an error in my staff report here. Erosion control measures have been proposed and were modified for the Inland Wetland Commission meeting last week, where they were approved. They satisfy the air slope requirement as well as the stockpile area requirement. Commission would need to find that the proposed measures, to the extent that they are alternatives from the Connecticut guidelines for soil erosion and sediment control, are acceptable. Finding has been added to this. They meet the coastal site plan criteria. They appeared before the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board last week. They received a positive recommendation from the Stony Creek Board with the following conditions: that any mechanicals visible from the street or private roadway be screened, as well as prior to the issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance and a certificate of occupancy. The following details should be sent to the Stony Creek Board for comment: window design, type of masonry on the proposed chimney, the proposed siding color and material, any proposed outdoor lighting, and the location of the mechanicals. Staff recommends the following findings. One, the coastal site plan is consistent with the goals and policies of the Coastal Area Management Act. Two, this approval exclusively applies to the proposed single-family residential use. No additional units can be established without further approvals from the Planning and Zoning Commission. We propose the following conditions: prior to the start of construction, erosion control measures shall be installed, and any measures deemed necessary by the zoning enforcement officer shall be implemented. Two, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the following shall be addressed to the satisfaction of the town planner or his designee. Any mechanicals shall be screened, and those details shall be sent to the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board for comment. Three, prior to the issuance of a zoning permit, the following shall be addressed to the satisfaction of the town planner. The applicant shall revise sheet 2 entitled Proposed On-Site Wastewater Disposal System to show the removal of the proposed deck or receive a variance, and condition 4, any lighting has to be compliant with section 6.7.
If I could just real quickly, just so you're all aware, it's this little deck here that we were connecting the two sheds with. That's what Evan's suggesting we remove, and that's fine. We'll remove it. It was a preliminary design element that I'm sure the architect could deal with another way. The other thing I'd like to mention, I did forward to Evan earlier today that the two closest neighbors, 33 and 38 over here, did send email in support of the project.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Mr. Preddy. Questions, comments from commission members before we open up to the public? Marcy.
I just a couple of, well, one really simple question and an observation, which you didn't mention. Are they putting a bathroom in that guest bedroom?
There is a bathroom in there, but no cooking facilities.
Okay, well, I was just curious because it was removed from the main house. And
no, in fact, we had to get state approval for the central system. Have two buildings going into one septic system.
Oh, okay. And then the other thing I noted was you have a couple of indicators for rain gardens.
Yes.
So they're going to add additional plantings to make that a more sustainable approach to the storm drainage. Is that the intent?
Yes. I mean, I don't know if Jim Preddy again. I don't know if you know the architect Fred Bland. He's very landscape conscious, I should say. They haven't worked it all out yet, but there will be. I'm assuming quite a bit of landscaping here, and I did forward the Yukon list for the rain gardens that they could choose which plants they want to have in there. So
yeah, I mean, just the fact that he's proposing a green roof over the entrance, I just sort of took my mind to, are they proposing any other sustainable type features as far as solar or geothermal or,
not yet to my knowledge.
It was discussed at the Stony Creek Architectural Board meeting. I think solar, the use of native plants, even geothermal, I think he wanted to explore. But he did state that he wanted to keep it as natural as possible and to utilize environmentally conscious measures where he could.
Yeah, no, I definitely commend him on. I can see that he's protected a lot of the trees and he's, incorporated his design around protecting the tidal, the tidal and the wetlands. So that's appreciated, even though it's may not be under necessarily our direct purview, but it's I just wanted to note it. A good example,
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Marcy. Other questions, comments from commission members or staff before we open up to the public? Hearing none, then, does any member of the public wish to comment? Evan, do you see anyone?
Anyone that would like to speak, at the bottom of your screen, there's a raise hand option, or you can type into the chat that you'd like to comment. I do not see anyone.
Okay. Any further comments? Mr. Preddy, got anything else for us?
No, sir. I think I've given you the whole picture.
Okay, great. And you've seen the staff recommendations. You're good with the proposed conditions?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions, comments from further comments from commission members or staff? Hearing none, then we will close this matter as a public hearing. This is something I think we can probably take up after we complete our public hearing. So thank you very much, Mr. Preddy. So that brings us then to our final public hearing for the evening, which is Roger Holt, applicant owner for 236 Pleasant Point Road. This is a special exception for an accessory structure. Is the applicant ready to proceed with that one?
Yes. Good evening, Jim Preddy, Crystal Engineering. I will go to the map. This is the property at 236 Pleasant Point Road. It's this kind of very odd shaped property with a driveway that's actually shared with 230 Pleasant Point Road. There's another application you folks approved a while back. But this existing garage here, because this is, I'll come in. Because of the zone we're in, you can see the setbacks are actually quite large. The garage exists. We did get a variance for the expansion, the vertical expansion of the existing garage. They're adding a second floor over this garage for storage use. The ZBA did grant the variance, and now we're here because it will be taller than 15 feet. There is no proposed ground disturbance. It will all be on the existing structure. There are some rough sketches just to give a sense for things, but we're at, from the slab we'll be at 20 feet high, and that's why we're here today. Again, just a second floor with some dormer space. The intent here is to have some heated storage space, as you can imagine, being down close to the water. Things that are sensitive don't really like cold storage always, so they just needed some additional space.
Chuck Anderson here. Thank you, Mr. Preddy. Evan, I think did you do this one as well?
Yes, like the applicant described, it's a special exception for exceeding 15 feet in height for an accessory structure. They are in a setback. They received variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals on December 19th, but other than that, they satisfy the bulk requirements for their residential district that they're in. They meet the off-street parking requirements. Condition has been added for any outdoor lighting. Based on the application materials, it appears that the special exception criteria are satisfied. Staff recommends the following findings. 1, the commission finds that the proposed use of the property is consistent with the special exception criteria. 2, this approval exclusively applies to the addition of a second floor above an existing garage. No change in use from the approved single-family home is a part of this application, and the addition of any units or an accessory apartment would need to be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. We recommend the following conditions. Prior to the start of construction, erosion control measures shall be installed, and any necessary measures deemed necessary by the zoning enforcement officer shall be implemented, and any lighting has to be compliant with section 6.7.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Evan. Question, comments from commission members before we open up to the public? Hearing none. Does any member of the public wish to comment? Evan, you see anybody?
I do not see any members of the public that would like to speak.
Hearing no public comment, Ms. Preddy, you have any additional or further comments for us?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Any further comments from commission members or staff? Okay, then we can close this matter as a public hearing item. So, and again, this is probably something we can take up in a little bit. So thank you, Mr. Preddy.
Thank you.
That brings us then to our approvals of our minutes. We had the February 1st minutes that I believe were sent around. And I don't know if you had a chance to review those, but if someone would like to make an appropriate motion with respect to the February 1st minutes that were circulated.
Fred Roos, who makes that a motion to approve the minutes of February 1st.
Sure. And Harry, did you have a comment on that?
Sorry to interject, Harry Smith, town planner. There are a couple little errors here. I mean, I don't think there's anything significant. I could show them to you on the screen if you want.
Sure.
And I mean, really straightforward. So can everyone see this? Says findings, conditions. This is under item 6 on the agenda on the first. That condition 4 should read condition 1. And the only other problem I saw was down here where this statement, Joe Bayoso seconded the motion to pass unanimously, should be after the end of that condition. So it just breaks up the wording. It's just a typographical area where that was placed. So those two things are amended. Past the minutes to be all set, I think.
Sure. Fred, is that acceptable to
Yeah, yes, I'll accept the amendments.
Okay, so as amended, as explained by Harry, Fred makes a motion to approve the minutes for the February 1st minute. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All in favor? Joe Chadwick?
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo?
Fred Roos is in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
Joe Vayuso in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair is also in favor, so the minutes are approved. So let's go back then to the public hearing items that I think we can probably act on. The first one, I believe, is 35 Buena Vista LLC. That was a special exception coastal site plan and grading and oversized accessory structure. And perhaps, Evan, if you can, we heard from Mr. Preddy, there was no public comment. Marcy commended the preservation and the landscaping stuff. It's been through the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board, which had a suggestion that's in this amendment. So Evan's posted this in front of us, and you've got 2 findings and conditions, 1 to the standard condition about satisfaction, and the condition 2 includes the recommendations from the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board. Is that correct, Evan?
That's correct.
Okay, and the applicant said they were okay with that. And 3 is the that's what was this about? This was the wastewater something. Or what?
Just the removal of the deck.
Removal of the deck.
In the front setback.
Right. Yeah. So that feature, I think Ms. Preddy explained that, so they will remove that. And then the 4 is the compliance with the lighting requirements if lighting's proposed. So with that, does someone want to make a motion to approve the application and adopting the findings and conditions in the staff report presented by Evan, presently posted in front of us?
Marcy Paluzzi will make that motion as presented.
Marcy makes a motion to approve by adopting the staff report recommendations. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Joe Chadwick?
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo?
Fred Russo in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
Joe in favor.
Marcy Palusi?
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair is also in favor, so that application is approved. So that brings us into the last public hearing item, and that was Roger Holt, applicant and owner for 236 Pleasant Point Road. And I see, Evan, you pulled up your staff recommendation, the findings. Again, this was, it was presented by Ms. Preddy with no public comment and seems fairly straightforward. And the two findings and the standard conditions regarding erosion controls and lighting. So if that looks good, does someone make a motion to approve this application by adopting the staff recommendation, the two findings, and the conditions presently set forth in front of us?
Fred Russo will make that motion.
Motion to approve from Fred. Is there a second?
Marcio, second.
Second by Marcy. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Joe Chadwick.
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo.
Fred Russo in favor.
Joe Vazzo.
Joe in favor.
Marcy Pelusi.
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair is also in favor. So then that brings us then to, so the application is approved. Brings us in correspondence. Is there anything, Harry or Evan, do we have any correspondence?
Harry Smith, there's no correspondence.
Okay. It brings into old business. There's no old business. There is a number of new business items that we'll need to, I guess, schedule matters for. Item 1, I think, needs to go to the Town Center Review Board. That's that's right out by the corner there, North Main Street and Main Street. Car dealership, auto body repair. The second one, that's a modification for the car wash that we did across the fire station. That's a minor modification that Harry may be able to handle as a minor, but right now it's on the agenda. Third item, I think you wanted to, we'll schedule a public hearing for it, but you wanted to send it before deep. What is that one, Harry? 0 Linden Avenue? What's that about?
Evan can explain it better than I believe it's modifying an existing sort of a dinghy tie-up, if you will. Evan, you want to just give him a quickie about it?
Sure, I think it's a parking lot for some of the islands. And right now they have a pulley mooring system where they have to, rope in their dinghies to get out to the islands. They want to propose a dock to be built that they can have some slips and easily get out to those boats, a little bit more safer for them. And I believe there's no activity proposed on our side of the coastal jurisdiction line.
That's interesting. Okay, well, I assume that's within our jurisdiction, so we'll schedule a public hearing and consider that. And then items 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all the Regal Cinema site. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. And with that's tentatively, do you have a public hearing date scheduled, or that we're
looking at the second meeting in March at this point?
Okay. So March 15th, probably, or whatever that is, 14th or whatever it is. Second meeting.
Even it might be St. Patrick's Day, which I will apologize immediately if it is, but
it's March 21.
It's 21. Safely with St. Patrick's Day. Okay.
Okay. So that obviously need a public hearing. That brings us then to planners report. Harry, what do you got for us?
You may recall the last meeting, Harry Smith, town planner. We talked briefly about the landscaping regulations, only to the extent of, I think, coming to the conclusion, the commission came to the conclusion that you want to look at setting up a committee, and I think asked commissioners to consider whether they want to be involved or not, with the caveat that only 2 of them probably could be, because otherwise you'd have a quorum of the membership. So I can let you know Sharon Hutner, I think she may have announced at the meeting that she was interested, and I can leave to the other commissioners once I announce his intention of being on it, or I can just let you know. Okay. Is that okay with the person involved? Fred indicated he wanted to be on it as well. So I think you have 2 right there. I don't know, but nobody else got in touch with me. I don't know if that indicates you don't want to be involved, or Marcy, you should be able to mute yourself, or you just get back on and you're not a co-host anymore.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Can you hear me now?
Marcy.
Yeah, we can hear you
Yes.
now.
I'd
Yep,
be
yep.
happy to contribute, but, I think, well, I don't want to tell Sharon not to, but I think Fred lends a different perspective, and I think Sharon and I tend to be very similar in perspective, so I don't know how you want to infer upon that.
I will give my thoughts as someone who doesn't want to be on the committee. That I like, Sharon has a zeal for this. We've heard her native and she's so I think that's appropriate. Fred is concerned about the average business and the impacts of regulation on that and brings that element to it. So I think that's good. Marcy, the themes, you have the expertise and I would like to get you involved somehow. Maybe not on the committee, but maybe checking in or reviewing. The themes that I've heard you mentioned, one is that it's good to have professionals do it. We saw have an example tonight. I was with you on that one. Just because I think that's helpful. And I get the other side too, that, hey, look we don't want to over-regulate. People just want to do their businesses, but I don't know, for a commercial project, whatever, you should do it. So anyway, that's one of your themes. Another themes is that the ability for the professional to have some flexibility, because you've mentioned that a few times. And it is kind of a tough thing to come up with rules, because that's what we're trying to do. Uniform rules. We got to be fair to everyone. You can't treat people differently. You got to have the same sort of standards, but yet have the flexibility within the rules to make adaptations. So it's kind of a tricky sort of thing whenever you do this for something like landscaping. It's not just like a setback. You got to have a 10-foot set. It's more, all sorts of stuff. So anyway, my hope would be that you could get involved in there at some point, maybe at some preliminary stuff. The other person, Joe Chadwick, you have made some very good technical, almost editorial comments that you did some good rounds on that. That I think is just a real, thing that benefit that we've also done, that I'm hoping that you could help out with this, at some point in here. So that's my thought. So if Sharon and Fred could be on it, but somehow, I don't know, Harry, what you think, if there's some way to I would particularly like to get, have Marcy, get her comments sort of in, maybe even before we bring it to the commission for a public hearing, and possibly Joe. And Joe Vayuza, I don't know if I know we're throwing everyone here, but I think, anything I could do at the public hearing. But so, Harry, any other thoughts?
Who else is being considered that's outside of the commission that's going to be a cross reference? Because I know we have a lot of more land trust environmentalists, and I don't know that we have any, I think Perry had said it before, commercial realtor type people, or, people advocating for the businesses. And,
Yeah.
I know me, if I'm sitting in the meetings, I'll have more to contribute than if I'm, trying to make time outside the meetings. That's where I get hung up. But if somebody says, we're meeting here, that's where I can contribute most, just the way my schedule works. So, I don't know that that's the right basis to make a decision, but, I think that the makeup of the committee needs to be balanced. That's my only concern. So
I totally agree. And I think someone, if it's not Perry Maresca, someone as a member of the EDC probably should be on it. I know Shirley McCarthy was one of the applicants, wants to be on it, and look at a couple more members. I think getting it five is a good number. So once you get beyond that, I think it gets a little unwieldy, but we can see what makes sense to represent the gamut there. The other thought I had was possibly before, during whatever the number of discussions the commission or this committee has, bringing that back to the commission, and we can provide some time, either if we can either do it at a special meeting or a regular meeting, hopefully, just to bring up what has been discussed. And so this is not really going off on its own tangent with some special committee and then coming back to the commission as a finished product. I think checking in during the course of the committee, looking at all the issues that have been raised and what they think would be a good way to go would be a better approach. So I think doing it step by step with commission input and feedback would be better in my mind. So I'm more sure to staff that, this is generally a direction everyone's comfortable in before we either start writing or drafting something. And then I would certainly, anybody who wants to get involved in that process, happy to have that, happen as well. But does that make sense?
I do think that it was just way too much information to digest in the last go round. So
I think it came out as a finished product that had a lot of information behind it. And, I think the regulation that was developed in Greenwich covered a lot of the issues. And that might be a place to look at, because I think that was a little more succinct and cleaner product. And some of it was the nature of me trying to just be a little involved and make sure, it was technically at least not incorrect. And applicants who are very knowledgeable about the subject or got themselves knowledgeable to a large degree, but not knowing how to, put that in regulatory terms. And I think doing it very differently the next round would be very important. And, trying to keep it more succinct in terms of what the goals are, try to get some consensus of the goals, and then what's the best way to codify that into regulatory language.
I think the idea of having an iterative kind of process as you were starting to describe would be much better in the long run for having the development progress from like big ideas to small actionable ideas, which was kind of the problem with the previous version, is that they had a lot of big ideas and then they would dive down into some little actiony things and then jump back out into a big picture thing, and then the focus and progression of the concepts was not conducive to regulatory action. And I don't have more than a hobbyist's expertise at growing things, but I have had a lot of experience writing standards through ASTM, and because of that, I have certain editorial opinions that might be helpful in terms of structuring things and organizing things. And if I could sort of inject that into the process as we go, without having to harm the intellectual product of the people who are experts, then I think the subject matter experts would be able to have a better time of it in developing their final product.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful. And I think hopefully by the next meeting, I maybe could talk a couple of you offline and talk with other folks that might be interested in being on this, and sort of try to come up with a tentative slate of folks that I think probably the appropriate step is for the commission to sort of create this committee with the two members that have been discussed, and other folks as you may see fit.
Great. Thanks, Harry. Fred, did you have any comments? I didn't.
Well, I think you know as well as the other members of the commission that my main concern was that there wasn't proper representation when these regs were written. And I think that and we go through this every single time when an applicant comes before us, is that, the regs are there they're like guideposts. I mean, I don't believe they're written in stone, because we can waive things. We have that option to waive things. What I don't want to do is discourage.
You do.
That's why I have ZDAs. Whatever.
Oh no! I don't want you to take me exactly. But what I'm saying is that there are exceptions that are to be made. And my fear is that if we have regulations that there are no exceptions or waivers or whatever, it's going to be very discouraging for anybody to come before this commission and feel that, listen, we had I think a perfect example before us tonight, where a man's taking a derelict building, going to rip down a house, and he's going to spend a ton of money to sell 6 cars. I mean, or have 6-car parking lot, whatever, 2 bays. And, there's just going to be just so much revenue that kind of property can bring to that businessman. And, he's going to spend a lot of money, not only to buy the property he has already, but to renovate the property. And I look at it and say to myself, we don't want that looking the way it is. And there may be times where, whether, the building is there, that you can't change those things. And we're so hard on the applicant that it's going to make it very difficult for anybody who wants to do business. I look at it and say, here's a guy's going to spend a lot of money, improve the piece of property. There may be things that need to be waived because of the circumstance, not because he's a bad guy or a good guy or he hasn't done the right thing. But we as a commission should do the right thing. We should be encouraging people who are willing to take that type of property. It's not a raw piece of land. That's a different story. But take an existing building that's been sitting there. It's going to take a lot more work and effort and money to put it back, on the books. And, I wouldn't want, and I'm going to use this because we're talking about it, a landscape regulation to discourage the guy, okay? I mean, we spent a lot of time on landscaping, and we didn't spend, and yet that's not where this man is coming from. This man's coming from, and he said it at the end, I bought property, I'm going to rip down a house, I'm going to take out the driveway. He's going to do a lot of work. And so I think sometimes, we have to look at what is there. I know what the regulations say. I think there's got to be provisions that not any two properties are exactly the same. I think it's different when you have an open space and you say, hey, it's got to be this way. When you only got 7 or 8 feet behind your building or 10 feet behind your building and there's a wall and there's neighbors, those are serious considerations. But in the end, are the neighbors happier with that kind of a building that's sitting in front of them, that derelict building? Or there may be some concessions made by the commission so that building has been improved for the neighbors, improved for the view of people who go by, and improved for the town where it'll be collecting more taxes. That's what I see. I'm not against any regulations. I'm not against any landscape regulations. But I think they've got to be balanced. And my fear is, and that was part of it why I was against it when they were proposed, that they were not balanced. They were not this. We don't live in a pure society where things can only be one way. I don't want to see any trees get cut down if they don't have to. But sometimes they need to be. Other provisions can be made. But we have no way of gauging. If an applicant cuts down 10 trees, we have no way of knowing whether there are 10 new trees that have grown in the town somewhere else that we're not keeping track of. So I don't want to make it a number game. I think it's got to be a balance between good judgment, on our parts, environmental judgments on our parts, but we just can't allow the tail to wag the dog and say this set of regulations are going to rule the roost for the developer. And I think that's where those regulations are going. That's why I was against being in favor of them. I'm not against being in favor of what I would consider sound and reasonable type of regulations. I thought what was being proposed was not sound, and I thought the fact that only two people came, and I know that it was the help of Harry too, but it was guidance. But 2 people came and made regulations that could dramatically change that whole aspect of landscaping, and no one else was asked to be part of that, and that bothered me. And so my purpose or my reason for volunteering is so that the committee doesn't become one-sided, that it's 5 environmentalists who are going to walk in and make regulations, because we're the ones who have to enforce them, basically, okay? Not the people who come up with the ideas, but they come to the office, they give Harry a hard time, they give Evan a hard time, we have them come in, and I just think that my purpose is to make sure that there's some balance, some rhyme or reason to what we do. I don't have any objection against good regulations, but I don't want to have regulations that punish people. I think that's where I'm coming from. And so, listen, I would gladly give up my request to be on the commission if Marcy wanted to do it. I trust Marcy. I think she's reasonable. She's got good ideas. She's got obviously the background to do it. But I make that offer to Marcy now. If she really feels that she'd like to be part of it, I'd be happy to give it up because I trust her. But what I don't want to do is have someone there that gets picked because they come from a certain have a certain agenda for the town that maybe doesn't fit the agenda of the entire town. Maybe it only fits the agenda of a small group of people. So I would make that offer. I'm happy to be on this committee if you guys want me there. If Marcy felt that she could add more to it, I give her my blessing, okay? Because it's, it's for all of us, it's just more work. But I just wanted to make sure on my end that there was balance. That's all. There was reason that was going to be done, and not worry that 30 million birds died. I mean, those are the statements we heard. Those things they're out of our scope. We're not worried about 30 million birds dying. We're worrying about Branford. We don't want to hurt the birds. We don't want to hurt the trees. But someone's got to be reasonable and say, look, we can make other provisions, but not so strict that you drive developers and applicants away with things that are just not reasonable. So I'll leave it there. And Marcia, you don't have to say aye, yes, or no at the moment. You can have that conversation with Harry. But I'll tell you, I would make that offer. I would step down or step away from it if you're willing to take it. If you feel you can't, for whatever your reasons are, no one's gonna hold your feet to the fire on it. Then I'll do it. But I would only want someone there that I thought was going to represent a wider view of the town. I think Marcy would do that. So that's my opinion.
Thanks, Fred. Okay. Well, Marcy and Fred, I mean, I think I don't know. Think about that between the next meeting. Maybe talk. I mean, I have my own ideas, and I think the balance that Joe's point is let's do this in iterations so that we don't just plop it down, have a public hearing, but there's going to be some discussion. So if we do that, then maybe Marcy, you can do it. And then I mean, I just, you have some expertise there, and I like Fred because you're bringing that perspective of the impact on the common person and whatever. But in terms of the actual expertise and the standards, Marcy, I mean, even to ask certain questions, we wouldn't even necessarily know it. Like, oh, I wouldn't necessarily thought of the tree line or something like that. So
I think I have an ethical obligation to volunteer, given my profession and given my, reason I got into the profession, was just to be a steward of the land and to help protect the environment and to do things in a pragmatic and logical way. So, I know Sharon's passion. I can certainly represent Sharon's passion. I think Sharon's passion is very consistent with Shirley's passion. And so I just am concerned that there's balance between those that understand development with those that understand and protect the environment and understand the costs of, for example, having to survey 4-inch caliber trees. There's balance. And I think there's ways, with consultation with Joe Chadwick to write things into the regulations that can keep things open and ended and still protect the environment, because I think that is the goal of the landscape reg. I forget who I was talking to about the Greenwich regulation, but I think it has changed substantially since it was originally written. I would have to read it myself, but because I was talking to somebody about where we were going with trying to specify trees, and so there's definitely specific areas where I need to do homework, where I need to be reconsider things that, maybe I had thought. I certainly have reconsidered some opinions about native plantings. I understand what's available in the nursery relative to native plantings. So, I have design opinions around it. But I certainly appreciate needing to save the birds, needing to save the wildlife. I mean, it's all integral to making Branford a whole place and a whole sustainable place. So, but to me, it's hard for me to say not me. I don't want to take Fred's perspective away either, because I think he lends a very balanced perspective to the builder side of things, having worked in his professions, so
sure.
It's just hard when it's only two of us, because I think everybody is offering something.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and I'm sort of, because I'm not going to be on it, and I'm using that role as to say I would love if you could be on it, with the caveat that we're going to have the iterations thing, like Joe said, and that if Fred comes in and looks at it, he's going to tell us, before we bring the public hearing, whatever. Because I think, Joe, you have, I mean, Fred, you have that larger perspective, and that's sort of what you're what's driving this. So Marcy, if you're willing to, because I see you more in the details, and that's what I think you need for someone to be on this. So it looks like Marcy, Sharon, Harry's gonna come up with the remainder of the group, and I like your number. I think it shouldn't be more than 5. You know, the single digit number is what you need, because otherwise it gets unwieldy. So Massimo or Joe Vaiuso, any comments? We need to, you know, you guys have any comments? But
Well, not to cause any hardships or anything, but I think the two best people for this is Fred and Marcy. Not taking anything away from Sharon, but for me, I think those are two most qualified people for this particular task. That's my opinion. Not taking anything away from Sharon whatsoever. So.
No, I understand. Thanks, Joe. Massimo. Oh, what?
You should be able to unmute yourself, Massimo. I think you're.
There you go.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta tell you, I will feel extremely comfortable with Fred and Marcy at those positions. I think they will be both compassionate and extremely knowledgeable, and very, very fair. I think both of them would be able to just be so balanced. I would feel the most comfortable with having the expertise of Fred and Marcy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that we could consider that. Sharon's not here. I'm reluctant to do anything. She volunteered. I know she's passionate about it, and my concern is we know she is very adamant in that area. I mean, she's mentioning that, and I don't have a problem. One of us like that. The idea is we want to have the balance. So, but maybe we'll we can finalize at the next meeting. How's that? But I understand that. So
at some point, we may consider rotating the positions depending what the duration of the endeavor is.
Yeah. Sure. Harrison, town planner. I really can't say. I'm not envisioning more than a handful of meetings, really. You know, maybe more, but I think there's so much already there. And I'm going to try and take it at least on myself to try and boil some of the questions down into something similar to what we came up with at staff level for all the other zoning regulation changes we talked about in December, so that we're not at the committee level at least talking about text per se. We're talking about questions of policy and what the direction of some of these individual questions that came up in the landscape recs should be, and get the synthesis of that committee. And hopefully there's some kind of consensus can be obtained. If not, it's going to come back to the commission. Essentially, it's a sounding board, I think, in a body of people that have different viewpoints. And I really see it as kind of an educational effort going both ways. I hope it works out that way, where perspectives of one side can be heard and understood by the other side, and vice versa. And hopefully something can come out of that. That's whatever guidance or information that's brought up in that group. I do believe in the end it's going to be the commission's job to kind of go through that and give staff direction as to what you want in it and out of it, sort of informed by what happens at that committee meetings. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure our daylighting, the night sky protection regulations, probably gave a lot of people fits when they first came out. But from what I understand, Branford's, night sky protection regulations are copied in many places, and they're a resource for many places. And I feel with the expertise we have available, and the passion involved, there's no reason why this should not be similarly a national standard worthy landscaping ordinance. I mean, granted, every taxonomy has a platypus, and we're going to have some strange, things coming out of this that are going to have to be resolved, on a day-to-day basis. But to the extent that developers want clarity, and quality developers want to move into quality places, this ends up being a pretty high standard for us to set. This is a quality place, and this is clearly what you have to do, and it's not going to cost that much. So we're gonna I see this being achievable and a fairly positive thing.
I love Joe Chadwick is setting the bar. We're going to do the national standard here. We're going to show you how it's done for our. I like it. Okay.
There is no reason why we can't. I mean, it's just
That's
because
right.
we're a small town. We're
Love
not
that
gonna sit here and
attitude.
say,
No
Love that.
pressure.
Yeah, good for
That's
you,
right.
Joe.
That's right. We're gonna blame Marcy if it fails. Believe me.
No.
I would have never done it.
It's never going.
Right. Okay. Okay. So there's. I don't want to do anything because Sharon isn't here, and that's not fair. So, but we'll talk about it again at the next meeting, and we'll get it done. In the meantime, Harry, you look for other people, and I like the iteration things because to me that makes it less integral as to who is doing it, particularly if you're more of a big picture person than the details. So,
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Great. Anything else for planner's report here?
I don't think so at this point. Evan, is there anything you'd like to mention that?
Nope.
Not? Okay. All right.
Okey
So I
doke.
think we're set.
Okay, then I guess someone can make a motion to adjourn.
Fred Roach makes that motion.
Motion by Fred, second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All in favor? Joe Chadwick,
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo,
Bruce is in favor.
Joe Vayuzo,
Joe in favor.
Marcy's
Marcy,
in favor.
and so the chair. Okay, so thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.